How Smart People Speak. Never Say These Words Again. Audiobook. Reading by Coleman Hudson. Published by A1 Audiobook. Introduction. The Day My Words Failed Me. The conference room was cold, the way important rooms always are. At 28, I was the youngest person at the long mahogany table by at least a decade. Across from me sat the executive team, a Mount Rushmore of stern-faced decision-makers, including the CEO, a man named Mr. Hayes, whose reputation for cutting through nonsense was legendary. This was my moment. For 6 weeks, I had poured everything into Project Ascent, a bold new strategy I was convinced would reshape our entire division. I had the data, I had the charts, I had rehearsed my pitch in front of my bathroom mirror until my reflection looked bored. I knew my material cold. I stood up, took a breath, and opened my mouth. And then everything went wrong. The words that came out weren't the confident, clear pronouncements I had practiced. They were weak, hesitant, and riddled with apologies. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice a little too high. "Thanks for your time. I just want to walk you through an idea that I think could be really valuable." Just think. The words felt like anchors, dragging my momentum down before I'd even left the harbor. I clicked to the next slide, a powerful graph showing a massive market opportunity. Instead of presenting it with authority, I said, "This is kind of a different way of looking at the data, but hopefully you can see the trend here." I saw polite nods, but their eyes were starting to glaze over. Mr. Hayes tapped a sleek silver pen on his notepad. Tap, tap, tap. It was the sound of a ticking clock, and I was running out of time. Panicked, I rushed through my key points, framing my strongest recommendations as mere suggestions. "Maybe we could consider reallocating the budget," I offered, as if asking for permission to have an opinion. I ended the most critical slide by asking, "Does that make sense?" A nervous plea for validation that screamed a lack of confidence in my own proposal. The presentation ended with a quiet thud. I had laid out a brilliant plan with the verbal force of a whisper in a hurricane. Mr. Hayes stopped tapping his pen. He looked at me, not with anger, but with something worse, disappointment. He said, "Thank you for your work on this, Coleman. We'll take it under advisement." Everyone in that room knew what that meant. Project Ascent was dead on arrival. Walking back to my cubicle, a wave of hot shame washed over me. I hadn't been outsmarted or out-argued. My data was sound. My logic was impeccable. I had failed for a much simpler, more humiliating reason. My words had failed me. Or more accurately, I had failed my words. The problem defined: your brain's invisible static. That day, I stumbled upon a truth that has since become the foundation of my life's work. The most intelligent, innovative ideas are rendered worthless if they are communicated with weak, uncertain, and reactive language. We spend our entire lives, in school, in our careers, in our personal development, focused on learning what to think. We accumulate knowledge, data, and expertise. But we spend almost no time learning how to translate that inner intelligence into confident, influential speech. The result is a hidden handicap that sabotages countless smart people. We broadcast our own self-doubt through an invisible static of reactor words, a subconscious verbal hedge of apologies, hesitations, and qualifiers. Words like just, I just wanted to say, think, I think we should, it's kind of a big deal. Sorry, can I ask a quick question? Maybe, this is a silly idea, but hopefully the project will be done on time. These words are the language of a verbal reactor. A reactor uses words passively as a defense mechanism. They react to their own fear of being wrong, of sounding too aggressive, or of taking up too much space. In an attempt to sound humble and collaborative, they end up sounding uncertain and unconvincing. Their language doesn't reflect their intelligence, it reflects their insecurity. And in doing so, they teach the world not to trust their ideas. If any of this sounds familiar, you are not alone. And more importantly, it is not your fault. Our brains are wired for social safety, and for many of us, using this kind of hesitant language feels safer. But the safety it offers is an illusion. The real cost is immense. Missed promotions, lost opportunities, brilliant ideas that die in quiet meeting rooms, and relationships that suffer from misunderstood intentions. The promise, from reactor to architect. After my disastrous pitch, I became obsessed. I dove into the fields of neuroscience, behavioral psychology, and linguistics. I studied the communication patterns of the world's most effective leaders, negotiators, and artists. I discovered that smart, influential people speak a different language. They don't just report on reality, they create it with their words. They don't react, they build. They are verbal architects. A verbal architect understands that words are not just descriptions, they are blueprints. They are the raw materials we use to construct confidence, build connections, design outcomes, and frame the future. They deliberately choose precise, powerful, and positive language to engineer their desired reality one sentence at a time. This book is your blueprint for making that transformation. It will give you a simple, powerful, and immediately applicable framework, the Verbal Architect Framework, to eliminate the verbal static that is holding you back and replace it with the clear, confident language of your true potential. This is not about learning slick sales talk or becoming an aggressive, unnatural version of yourself. It's about alignment. It's about learning the language that allows your external voice to finally match your internal intelligence. It's about ensuring that the next time you have a brilliant idea, everyone in the room hears it as brilliant. Your roadmap to a new voice. The journey from verbal reactor to verbal architect is a straightforward one, and we will walk it together, step by step. First, in Chapter 1, we'll lay the foundation. You'll take a simple diagnostic test to discover your own communication style and understand the psychological triggers that keep you stuck in reactor mode. Next, we will construct the 4 essential pillars of verbal language. In Chapter 2, you will learn the language of possibility, turning problems into opportunities. In Chapter 3, you will master the language of conviction, eliminating the weak, apologetic words that kill your credibility. In Chapter 4, we will build with the language of connection, transforming conflict into collaboration. And in Chapter 5, you will learn to speak the language of action, turning intentions into commitments. Finally, we'll move from blueprint to reality. We will show you how to apply these pillars in the most critical areas of your life, mastering meetings and presentations, navigating difficult conversations, strengthening your personal relationships, and, most importantly, rewiring the conversation you have with yourself. The words you use every day are shaping your destiny. Right now, they may be limiting it. By the time you finish this book, they will become your single most powerful tool for building the life, career, and relationships you deserve. Are you ready to start building? Let's lay the first stone. Chapter 1. The Blueprint. Are you a verbal architect or a verbal reactor? Every building starts with a blueprint. A detailed, intentional plan that dictates exactly how raw materials, steel, concrete, glass, will be assembled into a coherent, strong, and functional structure. Without a blueprint, you don't have a building, you have a pile of materials. The same is true for our communication. Our words are our raw materials. Every sentence we speak, every email we write is a form of construction. The question is, are you building with a plan, or are you just piling up words and hoping for the best? This is the fundamental difference that separates mediocre communicators from exceptional ones. It's the difference between being a verbal reactor and a verbal architect. A verbal reactor lets their words happen to them. Their language is driven by impulse, insecurity, and the environment around them. They use words as a shield, deflecting responsibility and softening their statements to avoid potential conflict or judgment. They speak from a place of subconscious fear, and their communication, full of hesitations and qualifiers, reflects that internal state. The result is a verbal structure that is weak, confusing, and easily collapses under pressure. A verbal architect, on the other hand, understands that words are tools. They are deliberate and intentional. They use language to build their reality, constructing confidence, framing ideas, bridging gaps, and engineering specific outcomes. They speak from a place of quiet conviction, and their communication is a blueprint for the future they want to create. Their verbal structures are clear, strong, and built to last. One is a pile of bricks. The other is a cathedral. Most of us spend our lives as verbal reactors without even knowing it. We pick up linguistic habits like lint, clinging to the weak, passive language we hear around us. It's not a character flaw, it's a default setting. But the moment you become aware of this distinction, you gain the power to choose. You can pick up the drafting tools and start designing your communication with purpose. So, which one are you? Let's find out. The diagnostic. Discover your verbal blueprint. Answer the following 10 questions honestly, choosing the response that sounds most like you in a typical situation. There are no right or wrong answers, only an opportunity for awareness. 1. You have an idea in a team meeting. How do you introduce it? A. This might be a silly question, but what if we tried B? Here's a potential solution. What if we tried 2? A colleague, Ava, gives you feedback you disagree with. Your first response is A. Yeah, but the problem is that your data doesn't account for B. I understand your point, and I'd like to add another perspective based on 3. Your boss asks if you can complete a challenging project by Friday. You think you can, but it will be tough. You say, A. I'll try my best to get it done. B. I will get it done. To ensure success, I'll need X and Y. 4. You need to ask a senior leader for a few minutes of their time. You start your email with A. Hi, Liam. Sorry to bother you, but I was just wondering if you had a moment to... B. Hi, Liam. I'd like to get your input on the marketing strategy. Do you have 15 minutes this week? 5. You're explaining a complex topic to someone. To check for understanding, you ask A. Does that make any sense? B. What are your thoughts on that? Or what questions do you have? 6. Someone points out a minor mistake you made in a report. You respond, A. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I missed that. B. Good catch. I'll correct that right now. 7. You are in a negotiation and the other party makes an offer that is too low. You say, A. I don't think I can do that. It feels a little low. B. That's not going to work for us. The number we need to be at is X. 8. When describing your team's recent success, you say, A. We were kind of lucky, but it turned out really well. B. The team put in excellent work and we achieved our goal. 9. A friend asks for your opinion on a sensitive matter. You begin by saying, A. Well, I'm not an expert, but I think you should... B. Here's how I see it. 10. You're giving instructions to a new team member, Olivia. You end by saying, A. Hopefully that's clear enough. B. Let's recap the first step to make sure we're aligned. Scoring your blueprint. Count up your A and B answers. Mostly A's, 7+, you are operating primarily as a verbal reactor. Your language is likely holding you back by signaling hesitation and a lack of confidence, even when you feel competent. The good news? You have the greatest opportunity for dramatic, rapid improvement. A mix of A's and B's. 4 to 6 A's. You are a hybrid communicator. You have some architect tendencies, but often default to reactor language under pressure or out of habit. Your goal will be to identify your trigger situations and consciously choose the architect's response more consistently. Mostly B's, 0 to 3 A's. You are already thinking like a verbal architect. Your communication is likely direct, confident, and effective. The chapters ahead will help you refine your skills, apply them to more challenging situations, and understand the science behind why your approach works so well. Why we react, your brain's ancient alarm system. If you scored as a verbal reactor, you might be feeling a bit discouraged. Don't be. Your tendency toward hesitant language isn't a personal failing. It's a feature of your brain's ancient survival hardware. Deep in your temporal lobe is a small, almond-shaped cluster of neurons called the amygdala. Think of it as your brain's smoke detector. Its primary job is to scan the environment for threats and, when it senses danger, to trigger the fight or flight response. For our ancestors, threats were physical: a predator in the bushes, a rival tribe. In the modern world, the threats are primarily social: the fear of being judged in a meeting, the risk of being wrong, the possibility of offending someone. Your amygdala can't tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a skeptical CEO. To this ancient part of your brain, a social threat feels like a survival threat. When you're about to voice an opinion, your amygdala might scream, "What if they think my idea is stupid? What if I get shot down? That would be social death. Play it safe." Reactor words are the brain's response to that alarm. "I just wanted to say" is a verbal crouch, making your presence smaller and less threatening. This is kind of important, minimizes the stakes so that if you're rejected, it doesn't hurt as much. "Does that make sense?" is a quick scan for social danger, seeking reassurance that the tribe isn't about to cast you out. This is the protective principle. We use weak language to protect ourselves from the perceived social risk of being bold. But this protection comes at a staggering cost. It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Think of it as a loop. You feel insecure about your idea. You use reactor language, "I think this might work," to soften it. Your audience hears the hesitation, perceives a lack of confidence, and discounts your idea. Their lukewarm response reinforces your initial insecurity. Your words don't just reflect your lack of conviction, they actively create it in the minds of others and deepen it within yourself. A verbal architect consciously breaks this loop. They recognize the amygdala's false alarm, but choose to act not from a place of fear, but of intention. They know that true safety doesn't come from hiding, but from building a reputation based on clarity, conviction, and trust. Chapter 1 Summary: Your Blueprint for Change. The central framework. Your words are not passive descriptors. They are active construction tools. You are either a verbal reactor, whose language is driven by habit and insecurity, or a verbal architect, who uses words intentionally to build their desired reality. The diagnostic. The quiz you just took provides a snapshot of your current verbal blueprint. Awareness is the first and most critical step toward change. No matter your score, you now have a starting point. The science of safety. Reactor language is often a product of our brain's ancient threat detection system, the amygdala, which misinterprets social risks as survival threats. We use weak words to feel safe. The self-fulfilling prophecy, this safe language backfires. It signals a lack of confidence to others and reinforces our own self-doubt, creating a negative feedback loop. The only way to break the cycle is to consciously choose a different way of speaking. Your first action, the awareness audit. You cannot change what you do not notice. For the next 24 hours, your only task is to become a linguistic detective. You're not to change anything you say or judge yourself for it. Your mission is simply to listen. Listen to yourself. Keep a small notebook, a note on your phone, or just a mental tally. How many times do you catch yourself using a reactor word from the list in the introduction, like just, I think, kind of, sorry, maybe, hopefully. Notice the situations that trigger them. Is it when you talk to your boss, your partner, when you feel rushed? Listen to others. Pay attention to the language used in meetings, on conference calls, in emails, and on TV. Who sounds like a reactor? Who sounds like an architect?
What is the effect of their language on you and others in the room? This exercise will feel like putting on glasses for the first time. Suddenly, you'll see these patterns everywhere. This heightened awareness is the foundation upon which we will build your new voice. In the next chapter, we'll lay the first pillar of architect language, the language of possibility. Of course, here is Chapter 2, designed to build directly on the foundation of the first chapter by introducing the first pillar of the verbal architect framework. Chapter 2, Pillar 1, the language of possibility, from can't to how can we? Think about the last time you were in a brainstorming session that went nowhere. A big, exciting idea was put on the table, and the room was buzzing for a moment. Then someone leaned back in their chair, crossed their arms, and uttered one of the most creatively lethal phrases in the English language. We can't do that. The energy vanished. The balloon of excitement didn't just deflate, it popped. The conversation pivoted from what if to why not, and ended with a quiet agreement to stick to the status quo. The word can't is a verbal dead end. It is a brick wall dropped in the middle of a conversation. It's the language of the verbal reactor, who sees a problem and immediately defines its limits. The verbal architect sees the same problem, but uses a different set of tools. They don't build walls, they build bridges. Their foundational tool is the language of possibility, a way of speaking that transforms roadblocks into open doorways. It's the conscious shift from stating what is impossible to asking what could be possible. This isn't just about positive thinking, it's about productive thinking. It's the difference between a mind that is closed for business and one that is open for discovery. And there is no greater story of this principle in action than the one that unfolded 200,000 miles from Earth, in the silent vacuum of space. The square peg and the round hole. On April 13, 1970, an oxygen tank on the Apollo 13 spacecraft exploded, crippling the vessel and putting the lives of its 3 astronauts in mortal danger. As the world held its breath, the team at NASA's Mission Control in Houston faced a cascade of catastrophic failures. The most immediate threat was the air the astronauts were breathing. The command module, their primary vehicle, was dying. The crew had to move into the lunar module, Aquarius, which they would use as a lifeboat. But Aquarius was designed to support 2 men for 2 days, not 3 men for 4. They were quickly running out of breathable air, not because of a lack of oxygen, but because of a buildup of their own exhaled carbon dioxide, CO2. The command module had plenty of square-shaped lithium hydroxide canisters designed to scrub CO2 from the air. The lunar module used round canisters. The square canisters from the dead ship were useless in the round receptacle of the lifeboat. It was a classic square peg in a round hole problem, and the stakes were life and death. Imagine the scene in Mission Control. A young engineer, let's call him Calvin, looks at the schematics and states the obvious, crushing fact. We can't connect the command module scrubbers to the lunar module system. They're a different shape. It's impossible. Calvin would have been correct, but he would have been speaking the language of limitation. He would have been a verbal reactor. Fortunately, the men in that room were verbal architects. The flight director, Gene Kranz, didn't allow his team to get stuck on the word can't. He set the tone not by defining the problem, but by defining the outcome. As he famously said, failure is not an option. The question on the floor wasn't, can we connect them? The answer to that was obviously no.
The question posed by the architects in that room was, how can we connect them? This subtle but profound shift in language changed everything. It transformed a statement of fact into a challenge of ingenuity. The team was given a new blueprint. We must find a way to mate a square canister to a round hole using only the materials available to the astronauts on board. They dumped replicas of every random item aboard the spacecraft onto a table. Flight plan covers, duct tape, plastic bags, and socks. For hours, they worked, their hands and minds guided by a single, powerful question. Not can we, but how. The result was an ingenious, clunky, but life-saving contraption made of odds and ends, which the team radioed instructions to the astronauts on how to build. It worked. The air cleared. The men survived. They didn't defy the laws of physics. They defied the limits of their thinking by refusing to use the language of impossibility. Your brain on can't versus how. The Apollo 13 story is a dramatic example of a fundamental neurological process.
When you say or hear the word can't, or its cousins, impossible, won't work, or no way, you are sending a command to your brain. Specifically, you're signaling to your prefrontal cortex, the sophisticated problem-solving part of your brain, to stop working. Think of can't as a cognitive shutdown command. The search for solutions is terminated. The brain accepts the dead end and conserves its energy. Why waste precious glucose trying to solve an unsolvable problem? In contrast, when you ask a question that begins with how can we or what if, you are sending an open invitation to your prefrontal cortex. You're activating its creative and analytical functions. These questions don't have a simple yes or no answer. They require exploration, imagination, and synthesis. It's the neurological equivalent of opening a new set of doors instead of running into a wall. This is the linguistic mechanism behind what Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. A fixed mindset says, I can't do this. A growth mindset asks, what can I learn to be able to do this? The verbal architect operationalizes the growth mindset by making the language of possibility their default. Putting it into practice, from verbal reactor to verbal architect. Let's talk about how we can shift our language and our mindset from reactive to constructive. Instead of saying, we can't launch a new product with this budget, try, how can we achieve our launch goals within this budget? See the difference? One shuts the door, the other opens possibilities. Instead of, there's no time to handle that customer's request, say, what's one thing we can do in the next 15 minutes to help? It's about progress, not perfection. Instead of, my manager will never agree to this proposal, ask, what data and arguments would make this proposal most compelling for my manager? Now you're thinking like a strategist. Instead of, it's impossible to get a response from that department, reframe it as, let's explore a different way to approach that department. Curiosity beats frustration every time. And finally, instead of, we've already tried that and it didn't work, say, what did we learn from the last attempt that could inform a new approach? Because every setback is a setup for insight. Notice that the architect's language doesn't deny the existence of constraints. The budget is still tight, the timeline is still short, the manager is still skeptical. The language of possibility is not about ignoring reality. It's about engaging with reality more creatively. It acknowledges the obstacle and immediately focuses the brain's resources on finding a way over, under, or around it. Chapter 2 Summary. Laying the first pillar. The first pillar, the language of possibility, is the foundation of the verbal architect. It involves consciously replacing the language of limitation, can't, impossible, with the language of inquiry and innovation. How can we? What if?
The Apollo 13 principle. Faced with a seemingly impossible problem, the NASA team succeeded because they focused not on what they couldn't do, but on how they could achieve their objective with the resources they had. Your brain's blueprint. Can't is a cognitive stop sign that shuts down the problem-solving centers of the brain. How can we is a green light that activates creativity and analytical thought. Engage, don't deny. Using the language of possibility isn't about pretending challenges don't exist. It's about acknowledging them and immediately pivoting to a solution-oriented mindset. Your action, the possibility prompt. This week, your task is to become a master of the pivot. Whenever you or someone on your team hits a wall and says, "We can't," I want you to deploy the possibility prompt. It's a simple 3-part verbal formula. Acknowledge and validate. Start by showing you understand the constraint. This builds connection and shows you're grounded in reality. I hear you, the budget is definitely tight. State the goal. Recenter the conversation on the desired outcome. And we know that launching this is critical for our Q3 goals. Ask the possibility question. Open the door for creative problem solving. Or, what would it look like if we tried a guerrilla marketing approach instead? Try it just once in the next few days. The moment you hear the brick wall of can't go up, use the possibility prompt. Watch what happens to the energy in the room. You'll be doing more than just changing the conversation. You'll be changing the way the people around you think. You'll be building a bridge where they only saw a wall. You'll be acting like an architect. Chapter 3, Pillar 2, The Language of Conviction. Eliminating I think, just, and kind of.
Chloe was brilliant. Not book-smart brilliant, but the kind of brilliant that could see the hidden patterns in a chaotic spreadsheet, the story that the numbers were dying to tell. At 24, she was the youngest data analyst at her firm by a long shot, and she just uncovered a trend that could save the company millions. Her big moment came in a small, glass-walled conference room with the head of the division, a sharp, no-nonsense executive named Mr. Sterling. It was just the two of them. Her manager had prepped him. Chloe has found something you need to see. The stage was set. She pulled up her beautifully designed dashboard. "Hi, Mr. Sterling," she began, her voice soft. "Thank you for your time. I just wanted to show you something I noticed in the quarterly logistics data." Mr. Sterling nodded, his eyes fixed on the screen. Chloe pointed to a sharp spike on a graph. "So, I think this is a pretty big deal, but what you're seeing here is that we're kind of losing a significant amount of money on return shipments. It looks like the new processing system isn't flagging duplicate orders correctly." She was right. It was a massive, costly error. But listen to her words. "I just wanted to show you. I think this is a big deal. We're kind of losing money. A fog that obscured the severity of a multi-million-dollar problem." Chloe proceeded to lay out an airtight case, but her language was a wet blanket on a blazing fire. She concluded by saying, "So, maybe we should look into this. It's just an idea." Mr. Sterling was quiet for a long moment. He didn't look at the data. He looked at her. "Chloe," he said calmly, "is the system flagging duplicates incorrectly or not?" "It's not," she said, her voice suddenly clear. "And is this costing us a significant amount of money?" "Yes, over $2 million a quarter." He nodded. "Lead with that next time." Chloe had the right data, but the wrong language. Her words didn't reflect the power of her discovery. They reflected her fear of being wrong. She was holding a winning lottery ticket, but was acting like she was sorry to bother the cashier. The verbal dimmer switch, how we dilute our own brilliance. The words Chloe used, just, I think, kind of, are what I call verbal dimmer switches. Like a dimmer switch on a light fixture, they don't turn your idea off completely, but they dramatically reduce its brightness.
They are the linguistic expression of imposter syndrome. These words are the core vocabulary of the verbal reactor. They're subconscious habits we pick up to protect ourselves from the perceived social dangers of sounding too assertive, too confident, or too demanding. But in our attempt to be safe, we become forgettable. Let's dissect the 3 most common dimmer switches, the ones that are likely sabotaging your authority every single day. 1. Just. The unnecessary apology. I'm just checking in on the report. I just have a quick question. I just think we should consider another option. Just is a verbal minimization. It's a way of saying, I'm sorry to take up this space. What I'm about to say is a small thing, don't worry about it. It shrinks you and your message before you've even delivered it. Think about the raw message without the just. I'm checking in on the report. Direct and professional. I have a quick question. Confident and clear. I think we should consider another option. Still a bit weak, we'll get to that. The word just adds nothing of value. It only subtracts from your authority. Deleting it is the single fastest way to sound more confident. The verbal architect knows their time, their questions, and their ideas have inherent value. They don't need to apologize for them. 2. I think. The confidence hedge. I think this is the right strategy. I think my analysis is correct. I think you'll agree this is a better plan. Of course you think it. You wouldn't be saying it if you didn't. When you preface a statement with, I think, you're signaling to your listener that you're not entirely sure of what you're about to say. You're turning a conviction into a guess. It's a verbal hedge, a way to give yourself an out if someone challenges you. Hey, I only said I thought it was right. Decades of research in social psychology have shown a clear link between perceived confidence and perceived competence. When you sound certain, people believe you are more capable. The verbal architect replaces the weak hedge of I think with stronger, more committal language. I believe this is the right strategy. My analysis shows this is the right strategy. This is the right strategy, the most direct and powerful form. 3. Kind of, sort of. The verbal fog. It's kind of a pressing issue. We're sort of behind schedule. My solution is kind of a different approach. This is the language of imprecision. It creates a verbal fog that obscures your meaning. Is it a pressing issue or not? Are you behind schedule or not? This language makes you sound unsure and your message feel unimportant. It's the verbal equivalent of shuffling your feet. Verbal architects speak with clarity and precision. They remove the fog. This is a pressing issue. We are 2 days behind schedule. My solution takes a different approach by focusing on. Clarity is a sign of leadership. When you speak with precision, you demonstrate that you have a full grasp of the situation. You're not guessing, you know. The translation table, from reactor to architect. Making this shift requires conscious practice. The first step is to recognize the reactor phrase as it's about to leave your mouth and swap it for an architect alternative. Use this table as your guide. From hesitation to impact, upgrading your everyday language. Let's explore how small shifts in our words can make a big difference in how we heard. These swaps help us move from tentative to confident without losing our authenticity. Instead of saying, I just wanted to ask, try, my question is. It's direct, respectful, and clear. Instead of, sorry, can I add something? Say, I'd like to add, or building on that point. You're contributing, not apologizing. Instead of, I think we should go with plan A, try, I recommend plan A, or plan A is the stronger option because. Confidence backed by reasoning earns trust. Instead of, "This is kind of important," say, "This is important." Drop the kind of. Your message matters. Instead of, "Does that make sense?" ask, "What are your thoughts on this approach?" It invites dialogue, not doubt. And instead of, "This might be a silly idea, but," say, "Here's an idea," or "One option is." Every idea deserves a confident introduction. This isn't about being arrogant or aggressive. It's about being clear. It's about giving your ideas the strong, confident voice they deserve. You did the work. You have the insight. Don't dim your own light at the finish line. Chapter 3 Summary: Building with Conviction. Pillar 2 is conviction. The language of conviction involves systematically eliminating verbal dimmer switches, weak, hesitant words that dilute the power and authority of your message.
The big three. The most common dimmer switches are just, an apology, I think, a hedge, and kind of, a fog. These words signal a lack of confidence to others and reinforce it in yourself. Confidence equals competence. In the minds of your listeners, the confidence of your delivery is often used as a proxy for the competence of your ideas. Weak language leads to the assumption that your ideas are also weak. Clarity is leadership. Architects speak with precision and directness. They replace apologies with assertions, hedges with beliefs, and fog with clarity. This isn't arrogance, it's a service to your listeners and your ideas. Your action, the just deletion drill. For the next 7 days, you are going to declare war on the word just and its hesitant cousins. The written drill. Before you send any email, instant message, or document, do a quick search, Control F or Command F, for the word just. When you find it, pause and read the sentence without it. In 99% of cases, the sentence will be stronger. Delete the word. Do the same for kind of, sort of, and I think. This is the easiest training ground because you have a moment to catch yourself before you hit send. The spoken drill. This is more challenging. Your goal is to catch yourself once a day in a live conversation. The moment you say, "I just wanted to," or "I think that," mentally flag it. If you're brave enough, even pause and correct yourself. For example, "So I just think we should," actually, let me rephrase. "I recommend we focus on the new marketing data." Chapter 4, Pillar 3, the language of connection, replacing but with and. David was dreading this conversation. On the other side of his desk sat Kevin, a senior software engineer who was without a doubt the most talented programmer at the company. His code was elegant, efficient, and almost always bug-free. He was also notoriously difficult to work with. He was dismissive in code reviews, impatient with junior developers, and viewed collaboration as a necessary evil. Kevin's annual performance review was a paradox. His individual output was a 10 out of 10. His teamwork was a 3 out of 10. David had to address the issue, but he knew from experience that Kevin did not take criticism well. He decided to use the standard feedback sandwich method he'd been trained in management training. Start with a positive, deliver the negative, and end with a positive. "Kevin," David began, "thanks for coming in. Look, your technical work this year has been absolutely stellar. The code you wrote for the new billing engine is flawless, and you consistently deliver ahead of schedule." Kevin nodded, a flicker of a smile on his face. He was used to hearing this. Then came the turn. "But," David continued, and he saw Kevin's posture instantly stiffen, "you need to improve your communication with the team. Some of the junior engineers feel you're unapproachable, and your comments in peer reviews have been pretty harsh. It's causing friction." The smile was gone. Kevin's face was a stone mask. He had stopped listening. The word "but" just erased everything positive David had said. The praise now felt like a disingenuous prelude to an attack. The rest of the conversation was a tense, defensive mess. Kevin left the room resentful, and David felt like he'd completely failed. He'd followed the rules, but the language had betrayed him. But the great verbal eraser.
What David discovered in that painful meeting is a fundamental law of human communication. The word but is a verbal eraser. It functions as a negation. It signals to the listener's brain, ignore everything I just said. Here comes the part that really matters. Think about how it feels to hear it. I love you, but that's a great idea, but I appreciate your hard work, but in each case, the but acts as a wrecking ball to the first half of the sentence. The praise feels like a setup. The validation feels hollow. It's a word that creates opposition, drawing a line in the sand between your idea and mine. It's the natural language of the verbal reactor, who defaults to a defensive or critical stance. The verbal architect, however, has a different tool in their kit. It's a simple three-letter word that has the power to transform opposition into alignment, conflict into collaboration. That word is and. Let's rewind David's meeting. Imagine if, after the praise, he had taken a breath and made one tiny change. Kevin, your technical work this year has been absolutely stellar. The code you wrote for the new billing engine is flawless, and you consistently deliver ahead of schedule. And to take your impact to the next level, we need to elevate your leadership and communication within the team. The goal is to make your expertise a force multiplier for everyone. Feel the difference. The word and is a connector, not an eraser. It validates the first statement while adding a second related one. It doesn't create a contradiction, it creates a more complete picture. The praise remains true, and the need for improvement also becomes part of the shared goal. The first statement and the second can coexist. This is the principle of validation plus addition. By replacing but with and, you validate the other person's contribution or perspective and then add your own. You're not tearing their house down, you're offering to build an addition. The science of yes and. This concept is the cornerstone of improvisational theater. The first rule of improv is yes and. If one actor starts a scene by saying, "Captain, we're approaching the alien planet," the second actor can't say, "No, we're not, we're in a bakery." That kills the scene. They have to say, "Yes, and I see the three-headed aliens are preparing a welcome banquet for us." Yes and accepts the reality presented and builds upon it. It's a powerful engine for creativity and collaboration. In conversation, replacing but with and applies the same principle. It accepts the reality of the other person's point and builds upon it even if you're taking it in a new direction. Let's apply this to a few common high-stakes scenarios. From but to and, the language of confident collaboration. Let's upgrade how we respond in high-stakes conversations, whether it's feedback, negotiation, or creative problem-solving. These subtle shifts help us stay constructive even when we're navigating tension or limits. Feedback. Instead of, "You did a great job on the presentation, but you went over time," try, "You did a great job on the presentation, and let's work on tightening the timing to make it even more impactful." It keeps the praise intact while inviting growth. Negotiation. Instead of, "I understand your proposal, but we can't afford that price," try, "I understand your proposal and appreciate the value you offer, and to make this work, we need to get the price closer to X." It shows respect and opens the door to solutions. Disagreement. Instead of, "I see what you're saying, but I disagree," try, "I see what you're saying, and I'm looking at it from a different perspective." It softens the clash and invites dialogue. Brainstorming. Instead of, "That's a creative idea, but we don't have the resources," try, "That's a creative idea, and for us to execute it, we'd need to solve for the resource challenge first." It keeps the idea alive and shifts the focus to possibility.
In every case, the and statement lowers defenses, preserves rapport, and keeps the conversation moving forward collaboratively. It turns a potential confrontation into a shared problem-solving exercise. You are no longer on opposite sides of the table. You are on the same side, looking at the problem together. This single word is one of the most powerful tools a verbal architect possesses for building bridges, not walls. Chapter 4, Summary, Building Connection. Pillar 3 is connection. The language of connection is about fostering collaboration and reducing defensiveness. The primary tool is replacing the word but with and. But is a verbal eraser. It negates everything that came before it, invalidates the listener, and creates opposition. And is a verbal connector. It validates the first part of a statement while adding new information, creating a more complete and collaborative picture. This is the principle of validation plus addition. The yes and mindset. This technique, borrowed from improv, accepts the reality of the other person's perspective and builds upon it, turning potential arguments into opportunities for partnership. Your action, the one day but fast. Your mission this week is to become hyper-aware of this verbal pattern. For one full day, just one, you are going on a but fast. Listen for it. Pay attention to how many times you and the people around you use the word but. Notice how it instantly changes the emotional temperature of a conversation. Make the swap just once. Your only active goal for the day is to find one opportunity where you would normally say but and consciously replace it with and. It could be with a colleague, your partner, or your child. Maybe your spouse says, "I'm exhausted." Instead of saying, "I know, but we still have to make dinner," try, "I know you're exhausted, and we need to figure out a simple plan for dinner." Observe the result. After you make the swap, say nothing. Just observe. Watch the other person's body language. Listen to the tone of their response. How did it change the dynamic of that tiny interaction? The single word change, practiced over time, will fundamentally alter your most important conversations. It will transform you from someone who critiques ideas to someone who builds on them, from someone who wins arguments to someone who builds consensus. You'll be building with the language of connection. Chapter 5, Pillar 4, The Language of Action, Banishing Try for Will. Grace was at her wit's end. She'd recently been promoted to manage a small team of bright, creative people, and 6 months in, she felt like a complete failure. Her team was consistently missing deadlines. Projects that started with a burst of enthusiasm would fizzle out, ending in a scramble of late nights and half-finished work. It wasn't a problem of talent. Her team was skilled. It wasn't a problem of motivation either. They all seemed to care deeply about their work, but there was a strange, passive quality to their commitments. It was like managing a team of ghosts. One frustrating Tuesday, after a key deadline was missed yet again, she sat in her office and replayed the kickoff meeting for that project in her head. She had laid out the timeline and assigned the roles. Then she'd gone around the table asking for confirmation. "Caleb, can you have the initial mock-ups done by Wednesday?" "I'll try to get them to you," Caleb had said with a nod. "Jasmine, can you gather the user feedback data by Thursday?" "I'll do my best," Jasmine had replied. "Leo, can you get the server configured for the demo on Friday?" "Yeah, I'll have it ready." She froze. It was right there. The problem wasn't in their work ethic. It was in their words. Her entire team was speaking the language of non-commitment. There's a reason the wise old Jedi Master Yoda famously said, "Do or do not. There is no try." He wasn't just being cryptic. He was delivering a masterclass in the psychology of action. The word try is a verbal opt-out clause. It's a prepackaged excuse for failure. When you say, "I'll try," you're communicating two things, both to yourself and to others. I lack full confidence in my ability to do this. If I fail, I have already given you a reason why it's not entirely my fault. It's the language of the verbal reactor, who shirks accountability to protect themselves from the potential sting of failure. The verbal architect, however, understands that words don't just describe future events. They program them. They use the language of action, a vocabulary of clear, unwavering commitment that builds trust and drives results. From intention to implementation, the science of will. In the 1990s, psychologist Peter Gollwitzer and his colleagues uncovered a powerful distinction between two types of goals: goal intentions and implementation intention.
A goal intention is a simple statement of desire. It's what most of us think of as a goal. I want to exercise more. I need to finish that report. I should call my mother. This is the language of try. It's vague and non-committal. While the intention might be good, there's no concrete plan attached. An implementation intention, on the other hand, is a specific plan of action. It spells out when, where, and how you will execute your goal. It takes the form of an if-then, or more simply, a will statement. I will go to the gym on Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. I will finish the report by blocking out my calendar from 2 to 4 p.m. on Friday. I will call my mother during my commute home today. Dozens of studies have shown that people who set implementation intentions are 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through on their goals than those who simply have a goal intention. Why? Because a will statement does something powerful in the brain. It preloads a decision. You no longer have to decide if you're going to do something when the moment arrives. You've already made the commitment. It turns a vague wish into a scheduled event. When you say, I'll try to finish the report, you are setting a goal intention. Your brain hears a suggestion. When you say, I will finish the report by 3 p.m., you are setting an implementation intention. Your brain hears a command. This is the language of action. It eliminates ambiguity and creates a blueprint for execution. It's the difference between hoping for a result and engineering one. Managing expectations with precision. Now you might be thinking, but Coleman, I can't always promise something. What if I'm truly not sure I can get it done? This is a critical point. The language of action is not about making reckless promises you can't keep. That would be foolish and would destroy your credibility. The verbal architect's skill lies in managing expectations with precision. If you cannot commit to the entire outcome, commit to the part you can control. From trying to owning, the language of intentional commitment. When full certainty isn't possible, clarity and partial ownership still build trust. These verbal upgrades help us shift from vague intentions to accountable action, without overpromising. Vague to precise. Instead of, I'll try to get you the proposal by end of day, try, I will get you the proposal draft by 4 p.m. If the final numbers aren't ready, I'll include a placeholder and a clear note.
It sets expectations and shows proactive planning. Uncertain into action-oriented. Instead of, I'll try to fix the bug today, try, I will dedicate the next 2 hours to diagnosing the bug. I'll give you an update on my progress by noon. It communicates effort, structure, and reliability. Passive into accountable. Instead of, hopefully the client will be happy, try, I will walk the client through the changes to ensure they are happy. You're not just hoping, you're helping. Non-committal into committed. Instead of, I should go to the gym this week, try, I will go to the gym on Monday and Wednesday morning. Specificity turns intention into action. In each verbal architect example, the speaker doesn't promise a perfect outcome. The numbers might be late, the bug might be complex. Instead, they promise a specific, controllable action. This signals reliability and proactive communication. It tells others, you can count on me to do exactly what I say I will do. This, more than anything, is what builds a reputation for dependability. Chapter 5 Summary: Building with Action. Pillar 4 is action. The language of action is about converting vague intentions into firm commitments. The core practice is replacing the language of trying and hoping with the language of doing and willing. Try is a verbal opt-out. It signals a lack of commitment and provides a pre-made excuse for failure, undermining trust and personal accountability. Will is a cognitive command. Shifting from I'll try to I will leverages the psychological principle of implementation intentions, making you significantly more likely to follow through on your goals. Commit to the action, not the outcome. When an outcome is uncertain, the verbal architect doesn't make false promises. They commit with precision to the actions they can control, which builds trust and demonstrates reliability. Your action. The commitment pledge. Tonight, before you finish your day, take out your to-do list for tomorrow. If you don't have one, write down 3 things you want or need to accomplish. Now, you're going to rewrite it as a commitment pledge. Scan and replace. Look for any weak, non-committal language, words like try, should, need to, want to, hopefully. Rewrite with will. Transform each item into a clear, active will statement. Add specificity, the implementation intention, for at least one of those items, add a when or how to make it even more powerful.
For example, original to-do list. Try to finish the Miller report. Should call the doctor's office. Follow up with the design team. Your new commitment pledge. I will complete the Miller report by 3 p.m. tomorrow. I will call the doctor's office during my lunch break. I will send an email to the design team at 10 a.m. to schedule the follow-up meeting. This simple 5-minute exercise doesn't just change your to-do list, it changes your mindset. It transforms a list of chores into a series of promises you've made to yourself. You are no longer just reacting to your day, you are architecting it. Chapter 6. The Architect in the Room, Mastering Meetings and Presentations. The weekly marketing meeting at Frank's company was known as The Void. It was a recurring hour-long black hole on the calendar where ideas went to die. Frank, the well-meaning manager, would kick things off with a classic verbal reactor opening. Okay, everyone, thanks for being here. I guess let's just kind of go around and give some updates. The result was a meandering, unfocused conversation. Caleb would talk about a minor website tweak. Jasmine would mention a few interesting social media comments. 10 minutes of valuable time would be spent debating the merits of a new coffee machine for the break room. The meeting's supposed purpose, to make strategic decisions, was lost in a fog of passive updates and random tangents. One Tuesday, the team was stuck. They needed to decide on a concept for a major upcoming product launch, and the deadline was looming. After 45 minutes of circular debate, they were no closer to a decision. Frank sighed, rubbing his temples. Well, I don't think we're going to solve this today. Let's all just try to think about it some more and we'll circle back next week. This was the moment of surrender. But then something different happened. Maria, a mid-level strategist who had been quietly listening, leaned forward. She didn't interrupt, but her posture signaled a shift in the room's energy. When there was a brief pause, she spoke, her voice calm and clear. Frank, you've summarized the challenge well, she began, using the language of connection. We have 3 strong concepts, and we need a clear path forward today. She stood and walked to the whiteboard. I've heard good points for all 3 options. To help us decide, how can we define the single most important metric for this launch? Is it immediate sales, brand awareness, or user acquisition? She had just deployed the language of possibility, reframing the vague debate into a specific, solvable question. The team, suddenly re-engaged, debated for 2 minutes and agreed that brand awareness was the top priority. Great, Maria continued, her confidence growing. She was no longer just a meeting attendee, she was an architect. Based on that, I recommend we eliminate option B as it's the least memorable and focus our final decision between A and C. She had used the language of conviction, making a clear, data-driven recommendation instead of a hesitant suggestion. After a few more minutes of focused discussion, the team overwhelmingly favored option A. The energy in the room was transformed from exhausted frustration to decisive momentum. Frank, looking relieved, said, "Okay, great. So we'll go with A." Maria added one final crucial piece. "Excellent. To finalize this, I will write up a 1-page summary of the decision and the next steps. Caleb, will you be able to create the initial design brief based on that by end of day tomorrow?" Caleb, now with a clear directive, replied, "Yes, I will."
In less than 10 minutes, Maria had used all 4 pillars of the Verbal Architect framework to rescue a failing meeting. She didn't have more authority than anyone else in the room, but she used her words to build structure, create clarity, and drive a commitment. She wasn't the host of the meeting, she was its architect. This chapter is your blueprint for doing the same. Meetings and presentations are not events you passively attend, they are structures you can actively design and build. The Architect's Toolkit for Meetings and Presentations. Let's break down the tools Maria used. These 4 strategies map directly to the 4 pillars and can be used whether you are leading the meeting or are an active participant. 1. Frame with possibility. Set the blueprint. Verbal reactors start meetings with vague agendas, discuss Q3 budget, and presentations with weak openings. I'm just going to walk you through some slides. Verbal architects start by framing the purpose and the desired outcome. Before you say anything else, tell people why they are there and what a successful conclusion looks like. Reactor opening. Today we're going to talk about the new project.
Architect opening. Our goal in the next 30 minutes is to finalize the timeline for the new project so that every team member leaves this room knowing their exact responsibilities for the next 2 weeks. This immediately focuses the group's collective brainpower. For a presentation, it grabs the audience's attention and gives them a reason to listen. 2. Present with conviction. Lay the foundation. When it's your turn to speak, your words are the foundation of your credibility. This is where you must ruthlessly eliminate the verbal dimmer switches from Chapter 3. Don't say, "I think this slide kind of shows that our sales are trending upward." Do say, "This slide shows a 10% increase in sales over the last quarter. I recommend we double down on the strategy that drove this growth." When presenting data, state the fact, then state your conclusion or recommendation. Don't hedge. When sharing an idea, present it as a proposal, not an apology. Your conviction gives your audience permission to feel confident in your message. 3. Build with connection. Install the beams. A meeting is a collaborative construction project. When others speak, a reactor looks for points to disagree with. Yes, but that won't work because. An architect looks for points to build upon. That's an interesting point, and it makes me wonder how we could apply that to the engineering challenge. Use the "and" principle from Chapter 4 to validate others' input while steering the conversation constructively. This is especially crucial when you need to disagree. Reactor disagreement. "I don't like that idea," shuts down conversation. Architect disagreement. "I see the benefit you're aiming for with that idea, and I'm concerned about its impact on the budget. How can we achieve a similar benefit within our current constraints?" Validates, adds a perspective, and pivots to problem solving. 4. Close with action. Hand over the keys. The most common failure of any meeting is a weak ending. The conversation just stops. People leave without any clear sense of what was decided or what happens next. This is the result of using the language of try and hope. An architect never leaves a meeting or ends a presentation without clarifying the next steps using the language of commitment. The most effective tool for this is the WWW framework. What was decided? Be specific. We are moving forward with option A. Who is responsible for the next action? Assign a name to every task. Caleb is responsible. By when? Give a clear, concrete deadline. By EOD tomorrow. If you are leading the meeting, your job is to state the WWW clearly. If you are a participant and the meeting is ending vaguely, your job is to ask for the WWW. This was a great discussion. Just to ensure we're all aligned, could we clarify what was decided and who is handling the next steps? This simple question can be the most valuable contribution made in the entire meeting. Chapter 6, Summary, Architecting the Conversation. Meetings are structures, not voids. Don't be a passive attendee. View every meeting and presentation as an opportunity to architect a clear, productive, and decisive outcome. Use the 4 pillars as your toolkit. Possibility. Frame the meeting with a clear purpose and desired outcome. Conviction. Present your ideas with direct, confident language, free of hedges and apologies. Connection. Use and instead of but to build on others' ideas and navigate disagreements constructively. Action. End every discussion with a clear commitment, using the WWW framework. What, who, when. You can lead from any chair. You don't need to be the designated leader to be an architect. A single, well-phrased question or statement can provide the structure and clarity the entire group is craving. Your action. The next meeting mission. You don't have to become Maria overnight. The goal is to start small. In the very next meeting you attend this week, your mission is to do just one of the following. The possibility prompt. If the conversation gets stuck, ask a "how can we" or "what if we" question to reframe the problem. The conviction statement. State one opinion or idea without using "I think," "just," or "kind of." Simply say, "I recommend," or "my perspective is." The and bridge. Find one opportunity to replace a but with an and when responding to a colleague. The WWW question. If the meeting is ending vaguely, be the one to ask, "So, what's our next step here?" Choose one. That's it. By taking one small, intentional architectural action, you will begin to shift not only how others perceive you, but how effective you can be in any room you enter. Chapter 7. The Architect in Conflict. Navigating Difficult Conversations. Alicia stared at her screen, but she wasn't reading the email. She was replaying the conversation she was about to have with her colleague, Brian, and every version of it ended in disaster.
Brian was a brilliant graphic designer, but he was also a bottleneck. For the 3rd time in 2 months, he had missed a crucial deadline, and his delay was now about to derail a project Alicia was leading. Her frustration had been simmering for weeks, and now it was boiling over. In her head, the conversation was a courtroom drama where she was the prosecutor. Version 1. The accusation. "Brian, why are you always late? You need to get your act together. You're making the whole team look bad." Version 2. The passive-aggressive jab. "Must be nice not to have to worry about deadlines like the rest of us." Version 3. The pleading appeal. "Brian, please, I'm begging you. Can you just try to get this done? I'm really in a bind here." All of these approaches felt deeply unsatisfying, and she knew they would only make things worse. The first 2 would trigger a defensive, angry response. The third would make her sound weak and desperate. She felt trapped. She could either start a war or surrender. This is the classic dilemma of the verbal reactor in conflict. They see only 2 paths: aggression or submission. They focus on assigning blame or absorbing it. Their goal, conscious or not, is to prove who is right and who is wrong. The verbal architect sees a 3rd path. Their goal isn't to win the argument, it's to solve the problem. They don't see a courtroom, they see a construction site. The relationship has been damaged and the project is stalled. Their job is to use their words to repair the structure and build a way forward. They shift the focus from blame to blueprint. The threat of you. Why conflict escalates. To understand why Alicia's imagined conversations were destined to fail, we have to go back to the brain's ancient alarm system, the amygdala. When you start a sentence with an accusatory you did this, you always, you are aiming a verbal spear directly at the other person's ego and sense of social safety. Their amygdala hears a threat and immediately triggers a fight, flight, or freeze response. Fight. They attack back. "Well, if you had given me a better brief, maybe I wouldn't be late." Flight. They shut down and disengage. Silent treatment, avoidance. Freeze. They get flustered and can't think clearly, making resolution impossible. You statements are the language of blame. They are the gasoline you pour on a conversational fire. The verbal architect's primary tool for de-escalation is the I statement.
An I statement does the opposite of a you statement. It doesn't cast blame, it simply describes your own reality, your observation, your feeling, your need. It's a statement of data, not a judgment of character. You statement, blame. You are so unreliable. I statement, blueprint. I feel a lot of pressure because I need your part of the project to complete my part. The I statement is less threatening because it's undeniably true. No one can argue with how you feel or what you are observing from your perspective. It opens the door for a conversation instead of slamming it shut with an accusation. The connect and construct method, a blueprint for difficult conversations. Knowing you should use I statements is one thing. Using them effectively in a tense moment is another. To make it easier, the verbal architect uses a 4-step process. Think of it as a blueprint for safely navigating a conversational minefield. Let's watch Alicia use it to have a completely different conversation with Brian. Step 1. State the shared goal, the foundation of connection. She doesn't start with the problem, she starts with a reminder that they are on the same team. Alicia: Hi Brian, thanks for talking with me. I know we both want the Apex project to be a huge success. This is Pillar 3, the language of connection. It immediately frames the conversation as collaborative, not adversarial. Brian, expecting an attack, is slightly disarmed. He nods. Step 2. Describe the observable fact, the data, not the drama. Next, she states the issue using neutral, objective language. No judgment, no emotion. Alicia: To stay on track, the deadline for the final design assets was yesterday at 5 p.m. I haven't received them yet. This is inarguable. It's not, you're late again. It's a simple, verifiable fact. This keeps the amygdala calm. Step 3. Share your I statement, the impact. Now she connects the fact to its impact on her using an I statement. This is where she expresses her feelings and needs without blaming him. I'm feeling concerned because I can't move forward with the web development until the assets are finalized, and I'm worried we're going to miss our launch date. This is Pillar 2, the language of conviction, applied to her own emotional reality. She is stating her perspective clearly and confidently. She owns her feelings, I am concerned.
Instead of assigning him blame, you are making me concerned. Step 4. Pivot to possibility, the open question. This is the crucial turn. She has laid out the issue calmly and clearly. Now, she invites him to co-author the solution. Alicia: Can you help me understand what's happening on your end? Let's figure out how we can get this back on track together. This is Pillar I, the language of possibility. It's a genuine question, not a rhetorical attack. It assumes he has a reason, not just an excuse. Brian, who had walked in expecting a fight, exhales. The spear he was braced for never came. Because he doesn't feel attacked, he doesn't have to defend himself. He can be honest. Alicia: You're right, he says, his voice tired. I'm really sorry. I got pulled into an emergency fix for the executive presentation, and I'm completely swamped. I was embarrassed to tell you. The entire dynamic has shifted. It's no longer Alicia versus Brian. It's Alicia and Brian versus the problem. From there, they move to Pillar 4, the language of action. They work out a realistic plan. Brian will deliver the most critical assets in the next 2 hours, and Alicia will help him get cover from their manager for his other competing deadlines. The conflict is resolved, the project is back on track, and their professional relationship is actually stronger than before. Chapter 7 Summary: Building a Resolution. Shift from blame to blueprint. In conflict, reactors try to win by assigning blame. Architects aim to solve the problem by building a shared path forward. You statements attack. I statements explain your reality without attacking the other person, creating an opening for dialogue. Use the connect and construct method. This 4-step blueprint guides you through difficult conversations. Shared goal, start with connection. We both want X. Observable fact, state the problem neutrally. I noticed that Y happened. I statement, explain the impact on you. I feel Z because of it. Possibility question, invite collaboration. How can we solve this together? Your action, the pre-conflict blueprint. You likely have a minor, nagging, difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's with a teammate who is always loud on their calls, a roommate who doesn't do their dishes, or a partner you need to discuss a small financial issue with. This week, your mission is not to have the conversation unless you feel ready.
It is simply to write the blueprint. Take out a piece of paper and script out the opening lines using the 4 connect and construct steps. Shared goal. We both want our team to be productive and respectful. Observable fact. When you take calls on speakerphone, I statement. I find it hard to concentrate on my own work. Possibility question. How can we find a solution that works for both of us? Just writing it down demystifies the process. It transforms a big, scary monster of a confrontation into a small, manageable series of sentences. You are building the foundation for a successful resolution before you even open your mouth. You are preparing to be an architect. Chapter 8. The Architect at Home, Transforming Your Personal Relationships. It was 7 p.m. on a Thursday, the witching hour in the Miller household. Mark and his wife Angela were trying to get their 2 young children fed and ready for bed. The kitchen was a chaotic symphony of a clanging spoon, a whiny toddler, and a sizzling pan threatening to burn dinner. Mark was trying to help his 6-year-old Leo with a ridiculously complex Lego spaceship. Angela, juggling the toddler and the stove, called out from the kitchen, "Honey, can you please set the table?" Mark, his focus locked on a tiny, translucent Lego piece, called back, "1 second, I'll try to get to it in a minute." To Mark, this was a perfectly reasonable response. He intended to help. But to Angela, who was feeling overwhelmed and unsupported, his words landed like a rejection. "I'll try" felt like, "It's not my priority." "In a minute" felt like never. Her stress level spiked. "You always say that, Mark," she shot back, her voice tight with frustration. "It's like you think I'm the only one who does anything around here. I need help now, not whenever you feel like it." And just like that, they were in a fight. Not about Lego spaceships or setting the table, but about the deeper, unspoken feelings of being unheard, unappreciated, and disconnected. Mark, feeling unfairly attacked, got defensive. Angela, feeling ignored, got more critical. The evening devolved into a tense, silent dinner and a strained bedtime routine. This scene, or some version of it, plays out in homes across the country every single night. It's a perfect example of how the language of the verbal reactor, even when used with good intentions, can erode the very foundations of our most important relationships.
At work, a communication breakdown might cost you a sale or a promotion. At home, it costs you intimacy, trust, and joy. The stakes are infinitely higher. The good news is that the Verbal Architect framework is not just a tool for the boardroom, it is a transformative blueprint for the living room. By making small, conscious shifts in how we speak to the people we love, we can build stronger foundations, repair cracks before they become chasms, and create a home environment that feels less like a conflict zone and more like a sanctuary. From complaint to request, the language of needs. The core of most domestic conflict is an unmet need expressed as a complaint. The verbal reactor complains because it's a release of frustration. It's an emotional reaction, not a strategic move. The complaint, reactor. You never help with the kids' bedtime, an attack. The unmet need. I feel overwhelmed and need your help. The verbal architect learns to bypass the complaint and state the need directly, framed as a positive, actionable request. This requires applying the pillars we've already learned. Let's re-engineer that kitchen scene. Mark is focused on the Lego. Angela needs help. Reactor, complaint. Can you please set the table? And question that can be deferred. Architect, action request. I need your help. Will you please set the table now while I finish dinner? Notice the difference. Will you is a close-ended question that asks for a commitment, pillar 4, action. It's not an attack. It's a clear, direct, and respectful request. It replaces ambiguity with loving precision. Now let's look at Mark's response. Reactor, non-commitment. I'll try to get to it in a minute. Vague, dismissive. Architect, commitment plus connection. Yes, let me just tell Leo one thing and I will be right there. This response accomplishes two crucial things. First, it offers a firm commitment, I will. Second, it validates the request, yes, while transparently stating a one-step plan. Let me just tell Leo. It shows Angela she has been heard and that help is imminent. A potential fight is instantly diffused and replaced with teamwork. Beyond chores, building deeper connection. This isn't just about the logistics of running a household. The framework is most powerful when used to build emotional intimacy. Pillar 1, the language of possibility for dreams and problems. Reactor, we can't afford that vacation. A dead end. Architect, that vacation sounds amazing. How can we start saving for it? Or what if we explored a more budget-friendly version for this year? Pillar 2, the language of conviction for appreciation. Reactor, thanks for watching the kids. I guess it went okay. Weak, diluted. Architect, thank you for handling bedtime tonight. You are an amazing father, and it gave me the space I really needed. Specific, powerful, and direct. Pillar 3, the language of connection for disagreements. Reactor, I hear what you're saying about your stressful day, but I had a stressful day too. The Pain Olympics. Architect, it sounds like you had an incredibly stressful day, and I'm feeling really drained as well. Let's figure out a simple plan for tonight so we can both relax. Validation plus addition. The language we use at home creates the emotional weather of our family. Reactor language, complaints, blame, vague promises, and dismissals creates a constant storm of tension and resentment. Architect language, clear requests, firm commitments, validation, and collaborative problem-solving clears the air and lets the sun in. Chapter 8 Summary. Building your home base. The stakes are highest at home. The principles of verbal architecture are most critical in our personal relationships, where communication breakdowns damage trust and intimacy. Translate complaints into requests. Most domestic conflict stems from an unmet need expressed as a complaint. The architect bypasses the complaint and makes a clear, direct, and actionable request using the language of action, will you. Commitment builds trust. Vague promises like, I'll try, erode trust at home. Clear, specific commitments like, I will be there in 1 minute, build a foundation of reliability and show respect. Apply all 4 pillars. Use the language of possibility for shared dreams, the language of conviction for heartfelt appreciation, the language of connection for disagreements, and the language of action for daily teamwork. Your action. The relationship audit. This week, your action is one of simple, quiet observation, followed by one small change. Listen to your home's soundtrack for the next few days. Just listen to the typical conversations in your home, especially during transition times, mornings, after work or school, bedtime. Without judgment, simply notice the patterns. Where is reactor language creating friction? Is it complaints instead of requests? Is it the word but in disagreements? Is it the word try instead of will? Choose one small remodel. Based on your audit, pick one recurring communication pattern that you want to change. Don't try to fix everything at once. Maybe your goal is to say, I will just once when your partner asks you to do something. Maybe it's to catch yourself before saying but during a disagreement and swap it for and.
Maybe it's to rephrase one complaint into a direct request, changing "the garbage is overflowing again" to "will you please take out the garbage?" This isn't about winning or being right. It's about being a better partner. It's about recognizing that the words you use are not just words. They are the building blocks of your family's happiness. You are the architect of your home's emotional environment. Build it with care. Chapter 9. The Inner Architect, Rewiring Your Self-Talk. There is one person you speak to more than anyone else in your entire life, more than your partner, your children, your boss, or your best friend. You have a running conversation with this person from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. That person is you. This constant internal monologue, your self-talk, is the most important conversation you will ever have. It is the narrator of your life's story. It is the architect of your confidence, the engineer of your resilience, and the gatekeeper of your potential. And for many of us, that inner narrator is a relentless, hypercritical verbal reactor. Consider this. You're about to give a presentation, and that inner voice pipes up. "I'm going to mess this up. I'm just not a good public speaker. I should have prepared more. Hopefully no one will notice how nervous I am." Or you make a small mistake at work. "I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I did that. Everyone probably thinks I'm incompetent. I'll never get that promotion now. It's impossible." This isn't just commentary. It's construction. Each negative, reactive phrase is a brick being laid in a mental prison of self-doubt. This inner reactor uses the very same toxic language we've spent the last 8 chapters learning to eliminate from our external speech. It uses the language of limitation, like "I can't," "it's impossible." It uses the language of diminishment, like "I'm just not good enough." It uses the language of opposition, like "I did it right, but it could have been better." It uses the language of non-commitment, like "I'll try to be more confident next time." If you spoke to your friends the way you speak to yourself, you would have no friends. Yet we tolerate this inner critic, this internal reactor, as if its voice were an unchangeable fact of life. The final and most profound application of our framework is to become an inner architect, to consciously and deliberately rewire that internal conversation. It's about learning to talk to yourself with the same respect, clarity, and encouragement you would offer to someone you deeply care about. Neuroplasticity, your brain is a construction site. For a long time, scientists believed that the adult brain was largely fixed, but we now know this is untrue. The brain has a remarkable quality called neuroplasticity, which means it can reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Think of your thoughts as pathways in a grassy field. The first time you think a thought, for example, "I am bad at math," it's like walking through the tall grass. It's a bit difficult. But if you walk that same path every day, the grass gets trampled down, a trail forms. After 1,000 repetitions, a deep, wide rut is carved into the earth. It becomes the default path. It's easier to walk in the rut than to forge a new path. Your negative self-talk is a series of well-worn neural pathways. The thought, "I'm not good enough," is a deep rut your brain defaults to. Being an inner architect means you consciously choose to stop walking down that old destructive path. You acknowledge the rut is there, but you deliberately begin to forge a new one. At first, it's difficult. The grass is tall. But with repetition, you build a new neural pathway, one of self-compassion, resilience, and realistic optimism. This is the work of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, a field of psychology that has proven we can change our feelings and behaviors by changing our thought patterns. The Verbal Architect framework gives you a simple, language-based toolkit to do exactly that. Applying the 4 pillars to your inner voice. Let's build a new internal blueprint, pillar by pillar. Pillar I, the language of possibility, from "I can't" to "how can I?" Your inner reactor loves to tell you what you can't do. The inner architect asks a better question. Reactor self-talk. "I'll never be able to run a 5K. I'm too out of shape."
architect self-talk. Running a 5K seems challenging right now. How can I start? What is the first, smallest step I can take today?
Pillar 2, the language of conviction. From I'm a failure to I'm a learner. Your inner reactor catastrophizes mistakes into indictments of your character. The inner architect reframes them as data. Reactor self-talk. I failed that test, I'm just stupid. Inner architect self-talk. I didn't get the score I wanted on that test. That proves I need to change my study method. I will ask for help on the concepts I didn't understand. Pillar 3, the language of connection. From but to and. Your inner reactor is a master of the backhanded compliment, using but to negate any self-praise. The inner architect practices self-compassion. Reactor self-talk. I handled that difficult client well, but I was really nervous and stumbled over a few words. Inner architect self-talk. I was nervous and stumbled over a few words, and I handled that difficult client with professionalism and grace. This is the language of Brené Brown's imperfect self. You can be both nervous and courageous. You can be both flawed and worthy. The word and allows both truths to exist. Pillar 4, the language of action. From I should to I will. Your inner reactor loves to torment you with a long list of shoulds, which only creates guilt, not action. The inner architect makes a specific, kind commitment. Reactor self-talk. I should be healthier. I should stop eating junk food. A recipe for shame. Inner architect self-talk. I want to feel more energetic. For my lunch today, I will choose a salad instead of the fries. A small, achievable, forward-looking action. Rewiring your self-talk is not about lying to yourself. It's not about toxic positivity or chanting affirmations you don't believe. It's about shifting from a destructive, reactive narrator to a constructive, supportive inner coach. It's about talking to yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. Chapter 9 summary. Constructing your confidence. Your most important conversation. The ongoing dialogue you have with yourself, your self-talk, is the primary driver of your confidence, resilience, and well-being. The inner reactor. Most of us have a default inner critic that uses the language of limitation, diminishment, opposition, and non-commitment, trapping us in cycles of self-doubt. Your brain is malleable. Thanks to neuroplasticity, you can actively rewire these negative thought patterns by consciously choosing a new way of speaking to yourself. Be your own architect. Apply the 4 pillars to your inner voice.
Reframe problems with possibility. Analyze mistakes with conviction. Embrace your imperfections with connection. And create change with small, actionable commitments. Your action? The inner reframe. This is the most personal and potentially the most powerful exercise in this book. For the next week, your mission is to catch and reframe your inner reactor just once a day. Catch the voice. The first step is awareness. Notice when that negative, critical inner voice pops up. It might be when you look in the mirror, when you get an email from your boss, or when you're trying something new. Identify the language. In that moment, mentally label which reactor tool the voice is using. Is it an I can't statement, a should statement, a self-criticism using a but? Perform the reframe. Actively talk back to the voice, using the architect's alternative. You can do this in your head, but better yet, write it down in a journal. Example, catch the voice. You're scrolling through social media and see a friend's promotion. The voice says, I should be more successful. I'm so far behind in my career. Identify the language. That's a should statement, pillar 4, combined with self-criticism. Perform the reframe. Write it down. Old thought, I should be more successful. New thought, I'm happy for my friend. Seeing their success inspires me. What is one small action I will take this week to move toward my own career goals? This practice is a form of mental strength training. Each reframe is a single rep. At first, it will feel forced, but with consistency, you are building a new neural pathway. You are firing your inner critic and hiring an inner coach. You are becoming the architect of your own mind. Conclusion: building your legacy one word at a time. A few years after my disastrous Project Ascent presentation, the one that sent me down this path in the first place, I found myself back in a room with Mr. Hayes. This time, I wasn't a nervous junior analyst. I was leading a new department, one I had built from the ground up based on a revised version of the very proposal he had once rejected. We were discussing a high-stakes corporate partnership. The mood was tense. Our potential partners were skeptical, raising a series of difficult, pointed questions about risk and return on investment. One of their executives, a sharp woman named Eleanor, pointed to a projection in our deck. "This projection seems incredibly optimistic," she said, her arms crossed.
We've seen competitors try this and fail. Frankly, I think it's impossible to capture that much market share in the first year. The old me, the verbal reactor, would have crumbled. I would have started hedging and apologizing. Well, you're right. It is kind of aggressive, and we just hope we can get there. Maybe we should look at it again. But the man standing in that room was an architect. I took a breath, looked Eleanor in the eye, and smiled calmly. "You're right to point out the risk," I began, using the language of connection. "It's a valid concern, and our model is built on a different set of assumptions than our competitors used." I then walked her through our strategy, speaking not with apology, but with the quiet authority of the language of conviction. I didn't say, "I think." I said, "Our data shows." I didn't say, "hopefully." I said, "Our plan is." When she raised another obstacle about our budget, I didn't say, "We can't." I looked at my team and then back at her. "That's a real constraint," I acknowledged. "So how can we leverage a phased rollout to de-risk the initial investment and still achieve our primary objective?" I had turned her challenge into a collaborative problem-solving exercise, using the language of possibility. The meeting ended 2 hours later, not just with a handshake, but with a palpable sense of excitement and partnership. As we were packing up, Mr. Hayes pulled me aside. He had a small, rare smile on his face. "You know, Coleman, I barely recognized you in there. You don't just have good ideas anymore. You know how to build them so other people can see them too." He had perfectly articulated the journey. My intelligence hadn't changed, my ideas hadn't fundamentally changed. What had changed was the language I used to give those ideas form and substance in the world. I had stopped being a passive reactor to the circumstances around me and had become the architect of my own outcomes. This is the power that is now in your hands. Throughout this book, we have laid out the blueprint. We have deconstructed the weak, reactive language that holds so many smart people back, and we have drafted a new plan based on the 4 pillars of the verbal architect. Possibility, to turn problems into challenges. Conviction, to align your words with your true confidence. Connection, to build bridges, not walls. Action, to turn intentions into reality. You have learned that these are not just communication tips.
This is a fundamental rewiring of how you interact with the world, in meetings, in difficult conversations, in your home, and, most critically, inside your own mind. Becoming a verbal architect is not about reaching a state of flawless perfection. You will still occasionally say, "I think." You will catch a stray "just" slipping into your emails. The inner reactor will still whisper its doubts from time to time. The goal is not perfection. It is intention. The goal is to move through the world with a new awareness. It's the ability to pause, even for a millisecond, and choose to build instead of react. To choose the word that opens a door instead of the one that builds a wall. To choose the phrase that empowers, not the one that diminishes. Your words are the single most powerful and overlooked tool you possess. They are not just the sounds you make, they are the legacy you build. Every conversation, every email, every quiet word of self-talk is a choice. With each choice, you are laying a brick. You are either building a prison of limitation or a cathedral of possibility. The blueprint is yours. The tools are in your hands. Now, go build something magnificent. The Architect's Manifesto. Keep this one-page summary as a quick reference on your journey.
A verbal reactor lets their words happen to them. A verbal architect uses their words to happen to the world. Pillar 1. The language of possibility. Mindset, from problem stating to problem solving. Reactor words, can't, impossible, won't work. Architect language, how can we? What if? Let's explore. Action, turn every can't into a creative question. Pillar 2. The language of conviction. Mindset, from hesitation to authority. Reactor words, just, I think, kind of, sorry, maybe. Architect language, I recommend. My analysis shows, I will. Action, state your ideas and requests directly. Delete the unnecessary apologies. Pillar 3. The language of connection. Mindset, from opposition to collaboration. Reactor word, but. Architect language, and. Action, validate the other person's point and then add your own. Turn arguments into agreements. Pillar 4. The language of action. Mindset, from intention to commitment. Reactor words, try, should, hopefully. Architect language, I will, my plan is. The first step is action. Commit to the action, not just the outcome. Be precise about what you will do and when. Application, the architect in. The room, frame the purpose, present with conviction, build on ideas, and close with a clear WWW, what, who, when. Conflict, shift from blame to blueprint. Use the connect and construct method to solve the problem, not win the fight. The home, translate complaints into clear, actionable requests. Use the pillars to build intimacy and trust. Your head, be your own inner coach, not your inner critic. Reframe negative self-talk using the 4 pillars. Your legacy is not what you leave, but what you build. Build it one word at a time.